be calling in, and one council member is going to be calling in, and we believe the mayor's on his way, but because we have such a busy schedule, we want to start right on time. So first item on the agenda is the Drake University students, and I understand this is your final. Okay, so keep that in mind up here when you ask questions, guys.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'd like to just introduce you to, we have about 50 Drake University, mostly seniors here today. And we were introduced with a project at the start of the semester by Joshua Barr, who asked us to look at the social equity piece of the Des Moines plan and look at suggestions for what we might be able to do to improve the operations with the underserved populations in the city of Des Moines. I'm Deb Bishop. I'm the professor that teaches the class, and we have two brief presentations. The students selected the two teams that they wanted to present today, and so these were selected by their peers to share with you this morning. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I just want to take a minute to thank you all for being here again today. It's really awesome to come out this morning and then listen to our presentation, so thank you. I'm Hannah Jorgensen.
I'm Daniel Hammer.
I'm Ricky Sandoval.
And our other team members are Shondell, Kevin, and Kayla over here. So today, a little bit of an overview of what I'll be talking to you about today is the definition of the problem after the interviews that we conducted and the research that we did that we decided to talk about, the background information behind it, mostly our recommendations, and then followed by our conclusion. So the definition of the problem that we had after doing a lot of research and conducting some interviews was the overall improvement of safety in the 4 wards of Des Moines, pictured here on the screen, including poverty, crime rates, and poor housing issues. We really wanted to focus on crime overall, and with the interviews that we did do, we understand that there's not a lot of room in the budget currently, so we wanted to keep that in mind as our recommendations go on.
So just some brief background information. We'll cover this very briefly so we can get to our recommendations. But one thing that we focused on through the interviews and through our research was actually mobility rates. So the underserved population has a much higher rate of mobility than the average population, which can lead to different safety issues in the community for themselves and also for those that are staying in those neighborhoods. So providing more stability there is very important. Like we already mentioned, obviously through our recommendations, we wanted to provide ones that were very achievable through the current budget and not be a major strain on infrastructure, things like that. So we wanted to make things that are very implementable should the City Council choose to implement our recommendations. So moving forward, we'll go to our first one. After team interviews. So this is just a list of the interviews that our team conducted. We thought that approaching people that were experts on the city, such as city council members and other experts in their fields within Des Moines, would be the right way to go, because you all have the experience from living and working in Des Moines and know what some of those needs are. So that's where we kind of took our approach with this project. And our first recommendation based off of these interviews, is neighborhood meetings. So we heard this over and over again in these interviews was that neighborhood meetings were not up to par and could be improved to help represent these underserved citizens in Des Moines. So after going through some online research, I discovered that many of these neighborhood associations may not even have a website listed on the City of Des Moines website, or if they do, it's a very poor website, it's not very easy to use, or it's not mobile friendly. So we think that a very, very easy step for the City of Des Moines to take to improve access to neighborhood meetings is to provide free website templates and free website hosting to these neighborhood associations. And with these mobile friendly sites, those could then be more accessible to the underserved populations that may be trying to access these resources via their mobile phone. A second step would be to hold neighborhood meetings at school. This came directly from an interview with Ms. Westergaard from I Have a Dream Foundation, and she said that being able to provide a safe and known environment instead of some random government building that people may not have access or be familiar with, instead having them at schools where they're familiar with the environment, they may already be going there and using transportation to get there to get their kids or have been there for other meetings. That would make them much more accessible to people that may not have reliable transportation or may not have time to go out of their way to another location throughout their day. Third, hosting information conferences about resources could be another great way to involve these people and get them access to resources that they may not already have. So through our research, we discovered that Des Moines actually has one of the highest rates per capita of nonprofits in the country. And so just simply giving the people these resources that they may not even know about, because there are so many, and they may be in different parts of the city, but some neighborhoods may not know about them as much as others. This can provide a lot of information to both safety information, safety resources, and also financial resources and other ones that are provided by these nonprofits. And lastly, this is kind of an umbrella statement, but we did hear frequently throughout these meetings was greater city government engagement. So whether that's through these first 3 steps, or whether that's through simply going to more neighborhood meetings as the city council and other city government officials, we think that's very important to try to get more face-to-face interaction with these underserved residents of Des Moines to further both their growth as individuals within the community, the neighborhood growth, and safety within Des Moines.
Great. So as you can see here on the map, this is just a quick map showing the crime statistics currently in Des Moines, with the darker areas being the safest place to live, and then the lighter areas being a little bit more dangerous, which is more central Des Moines. So with this, one of our first recommendations with this would be blue light security poles. So after interviewing with Lieutenant Michael McTaggart, we came up with the idea of putting blue light security poles in more areas. I know from experience, a lot of us with the Drake neighborhood, we have these around, and they are used in dangerous situations or when you're feeling unsafe, where you can just simply hit the button and get connected with someone immediately. So with this, the goals would be to increase the level of safety just throughout the area, to implement these in more running trails, parks, and neighborhoods where there is a little bit more of a dangerous area or the lighter areas in the map showed before. This would just be a great way for individuals to take advantage of the situation, and they can press a button if they're feeling unsafe or have intuition that something is going to happen for someone else or themselves. Next would be landscaping. We had an interview with Jackie Lloyd. She really talked about this a lot throughout the interview with the crime prevention through environmental design, the multidisciplinary approach. So it was really interesting to us to understand that these steps are being taken in order to prevent crime from occurring through environmental design. So with this, we thought that there could be improvement in trimming of the bushes, overgrown grass, branches on trees as well in parks and neighborhoods, just to kind of increase the overall individual being able to locate if something is going to happen, or maybe feel that intuition again. So the goal would be prevention of crime, individual awareness, and then increase in overall natural surveillance as well. And then lastly, with the ones I'll be talking about, is lighting. So this is kind of simple, but it does actually help a lot in different areas, is increasing lighting in remote areas. So again, our interview with Jackie Lloyd, she talked a lot about, through her rental homes, how this has been a really big thing that they've been implementing, is just the overall lighting in order to increase safety for individuals. Areas to increase that we talked about with the lieutenant as well as Jackie are parking lots, running trails, and then low-income housing as well, as an overall goal to increase security and safety.
For our final recommendation, we recommend the neighborhood alert system. We know it is the Bulldog Alert. Quick review of what it is. If a dangerous crime happens in the Drake area, we are notified by phone call and by email. The phone call will give a brief description of the crime that occurred and a recommendation of how to conduct ourselves. Usually there's a follow-up with the phone call. Pockets, we feel this would be effective because pockets of rental properties commit most crimes in poor neighborhoods. This in turn leaves scared family and homeowners. Our key area of focus would be 50314 for the first area of alert system. Part of the prevention, we hope neighborhoods labeled high crime areas and returning with lower high insurance premiums for poor neighborhoods. We also hope to prevent high crime and increase property values. This would in turn encourage business development and increase jobs. Excuse me. Alert systems are on the rise in its potential progress. Something that we learned from research with Dr. Mary Chapman is that for something to be implemented into policy, it must be in practice. Alert systems are in current practice in college campuses around the nation, including ours. It's called the Bulldog Alert. Also, part of its effectiveness is police or security are in charge of dispatching the alert. Scott Law is in charge of dispatching the alert. He doesn't have to go through a hierarchy of commands, dean, the provost, the vice president, etc. Also is the widespread of technology and its users. Most people have cell phones, laptops, tablets on their person. Here are some statistics that we hope will help people react and respond to possible threats, as well as its overall effectiveness. 81% of people in poverty own cell phones. 58% of people in poverty have computers. This is a Census Bureau conducted this in 2013. It's nationwide. 13% of those earning less than $30,000 are smartphone dependent. Smartphone dependent is when people, anytime they're on the internet, it's for insurance, claims, medical insurance, job applications, anything they need, they use on their smartphone. As well as 64% of adults own smartphones. Our conclusion is to increase safety by neighborhood involvement, install security poles, lighting in dangerous areas, and landscaping, abandoned buildings, homes, etc. We believe this will provide a community with the tools and awareness to uplift themselves from poverty, decrease crime in neighborhoods, rebuild social equity. A community treated like one will act as one. It will also help those individuals move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The summary is the definition of the problem. We talked about our background information, our current recommendations, and the conclusion. Here is our contact information. We would like to thank you and open it up for any questions.
Questions, comments from council?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yep, very nice.
Very
Thank
good.
you for your hard work. We appreciate it.
One thing that you didn't include would be the financial, what would be the financial cost of implementing all of this, and that's something that I know that you're done with your project, but that we would have to look at from a city perspective.
Definitely.
Great job. Thank you. Chris, did you have any questions for the students?
He's off. He'll be back on in a minute.
Oh, okay.
I do have one. Nice picture in there, but it would look better if it had been Des Moines policeman.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Parks Rec, right?
No, this is another student presentation.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you guys so much for having us here this morning. I guarantee you that we're all very thrilled to be here at 7:30 in the morning for our first final of the week. My name is Kenia Calderon,
My name is Joseph Tinker.
and our team is also sitting in the back. We have Travis Brower, David Greenfield, Teresa Keller, and Krista Thomason. All right, without further ado, our goal and objective is extremely simple. We wanted to create recommendations and solutions to address certain issues that we're facing here in Des Moines. I'm a Des Moines resident, so most of these did not come as a surprise. We want to make sure that our recommendations align with your strategic plan that was released last year. Address the four main issues that we found offer recommendations and solutions, and address the sustainability of a lot of our efforts and how we can make sure that they have a long-term effect in our city. So after doing all of our research, we found that there's 4 main issues affecting Des Moines residents, which are poverty, high crime rates, property equity, and disparity in social equity. So we chose these 2 areas, which the one on the left is the Drake neighborhood area, and the one on the right is more of the east side part of town. We chose these 2 because we found that the issues that I mentioned are prominent in these 2 areas, and we can use these 2 to see if the efforts that we're trying to implement across Polk County will be effective by just measuring them in these 2 areas. And another important thing is that it addresses all 4 wards, so we're not leaving one out. And we feel like because there's different folks that live in this area, such as immigrant, refugees, and just Americans, we can have a great potential in being successful in our efforts. Another map that we took a look when brainstorming our recommendations was the poverty rates in the areas as well. We found that there's folks living with less than $20,000 per households. Some are even extremely below the federal poverty level rates, and that's something that we wish to address with our initiatives. So before we go into our recommendations, we need to address how did we get here. And throughout the last decade, we've seen a large wave of immigrants coming to Iowa. One of them was me. And many of the reasons why immigrants or refugees are facing poverty and are subject to fraud and crime is because of a language barrier. And there's plenty of resources within our county that could help them better their situation, keep their homes, get better jobs. But unfortunately, there's a communication gap that we need to address. And how can we make sure that these resources actually get to the families in need? So when we were thinking of our recommendations, we didn't want to throw something out there that hasn't been proven effective. So we looked at what other cities are doing, cities with large populations of immigrants and refugees, and what's working for them and what has not worked for them. And that's what we used as our base and starting line for our recommendations. So for our first recommendation, we suggest following the example of the city of Seattle. They created an Immigrant and Refugee Commission, and so far it's been extremely effective. And this came out of their 2007 Immigrant and Refugee Report and Action Plan. Because they were facing similar issues that we're facing here right now, the immigrant and refugee population in our county will only continue to grow. And if we address it before we have large amount of people without resources, I think this would be extremely helpful to implement. 8 commissioners are appointed by the mayor and 7 are appointed by city council members. And every year they have to report what they've been doing, what kind of collaborations and efforts they've been implementing across the city, and what kind of advice they're giving their city council. And one of their projects that they worked on was addressing homelessness in their city, which is also an issue for in our county. And they've been able to implement a program by collaborating with other commissions. So this work allows them to be able to advise other commissions on the reality of these families and what they're living. So our vision for Polk County would be to have a similar commission to create sustainability, to be able to advise the city council on different decisions and let you all know what the reality is, because sometimes it's hard to understand what these families are going through if it's not a reality every day. And that's okay. And that's why we need to work with these communities. It would also give them a voice and representation in government. So it would increase the representation that we see across boards, because it will get them engaged, civic engaged, at the local level. So whenever any other seat comes up in other commissions, they will be able to move around as well and see their work be useful in other areas, not just in the Immigrant and Refugee Commission. We've also listed a group of nonprofits within our county that are working with immigrant and refugee populations. So there's oftentimes that we think that they're not going to apply for such positions, but if we work in collaboration with these organizations, we can have them help us identify leaders in our community that would be extremely effective and instrumental in such commission. Our second recommendation is to address the housing issue that we have in our county. There's families losing their homes. Some have their property value extremely low, and so when they're trying to sell their home, they're not able to. So we're suggesting starting a campaign to address housing and property improvements. Like I mentioned, we have plenty of resources. One of them was the Habitat for Humanity has a tool library. So folks who are wanting to make some improvements in their properties can do so by going to rent a tool. As we all know, those tools are extremely expensive, and some families may think that they're not able to because of their economic status. So these are the different opportunities that we have in our city, that if we built a campaign to let them know about these resources, they would be able to improve their housing issues. Another one that we extremely think it's valuable is to have some sort of counseling to prevent foreclosures. There is a lot of resources right now that would get folks out of when they're already in the process for foreclosure, but we need to be proactive and prevent that from ever happening. So some sort of counseling and let them know what they can do to avoid being in that situation later.
For our third and final recommendation, we would like to institute a free educational tax program. The idea of this program would be to educate people on how to file their taxes, as well as take advantage of the earned income tax credit. It's estimated that we could raise household incomes as much as 25%. This program would be free to households below the federal poverty level and would run from January through April at Des Moines high schools such as Hoover High, North High, and East High. We would look to maximize volunteer efforts from our communities such as Drake, and asking for volunteer lawyers, CPAs, and graduate students seeking CPA degrees. When researching this, we found a similar program in Portland, Oregon. It was found that a large number of people in the city of Portland were not filing their taxes and were unaware of the earned income tax credit. It was estimated that the city of Portland was missing out on over $130 million in federal benefits. While this number might not be as substantial in Des Moines, we think it should have a significant impact. We thank you for your time, and we are open to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. You referenced your first one about the commissions, and you referenced Seattle. How many others, how many other cities in the United States have these commissions? Is it just Seattle?
No, I found others in other states, but I focus in Seattle and also Denver, who also implemented, which are the most recent ones. So other cities have had them for a while. I believe the first one was created in 2002, but I don't remember exactly the city. So this is a new trend that's happening across cities.
But you don't know how many?
No, not off the top of my head.
And then the homeless rate, what happened in Seattle? Did it lower it significantly with the help of this commission?
I believe so. It was just reported last year. So I'm not exactly sure how much it lowered it, but I know that they were implementing a plan across commissions.
And then your second point with the financial assistance, how would you facilitate that for repairs and maintenance to some of these blighted homes if funding was available? How would you, how would you do that? What program, who would facilitate that?
For financial assistance?
Yes.
I believe we have efforts in town that would be able to address that. The way that I was thinking about it was that since some families do find themselves in not the most ideal economic statuses, we can address how they can save up or improve their economic status to be able to purchase a home. Maybe not a home that we think it would be extremely expensive, but maybe buying homes that are cheaper and being able to fix them up for them to secure a property. I don't have anyone in mind that could facilitate that, but that's something that it would be up to us to figure out who would be the best to address such issue.
I love that idea, and we've had that idea as a council and supervisors at Polk County. We're just trying to figure out a way how to facilitate that type of maintenance to folks that are underprivileged and need some help, assistance in fixing up their homes and bringing the housing stock up to good. So I just wondered if you had any ideas.
And if I may add, and that's the point of the commission, because as a Latino immigrant, I know what affects the Latino immigrants in Des Moines, but we have other populations. So if we had the commission, if we had a Burmese representative on our commission, they would be able to let us know how to best communicate such issues with the community.
Well, I think there's elderly and other low income, not just immigrants or refugees that have problems with their homes and their housing stock. Thank you. Very good presentation.
Thank you.
Christine?
I like the suggestion on the earned income tax credit. I really like that a lot because I believe that it is, people are not aware of it, and it's one of the taxes that you actually have to be working in order to qualify to receive earned income tax credit. But does Drake have a VITA program?
What's that now?
A VITA program, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. Do you do that at Drake? They used to.
I'm unaware.
I'm not aware.
We do have it?
Okay. Okay, so Drake can really play an integral role because you're right in the heart of where many of the individuals would qualify. And you also have, I know, through United Way, our city clerk has worked on the VITA program, and you've got AARP. So it would be nice if we could bring all of those entities together to really focus on expanding communication and making sure people are aware. The downside is your volunteers have to go through a training process, and it's pretty time intensive to get there. It's great if you can get volunteers, but I know that's always been one of the issues that they've dealt with. But if it could be a requirement at Drake that students have to do X number of volunteer hours, that would be a great way. She's making notes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in this morning. Great work. All right, let's quickly move over to the Parks restroom policy. Richard Brown.
I had no idea who the students.
Yeah, me either.
The parking lot was full.
I know. Didn't you get nervous when you pulled up? I'm thinking, oh my God. Contract sales.
That's exactly what I thought.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, well, that's why we had to park halfway down the street.
Slowly.
No, I'm sorry they didn't want to stay to hear for.
I know. I don't know why. It's riveting.
Yeah. I don't think the requirement was to watch the whole city council meeting.
They should have came tonight.
Mustn't be very exciting though. All right.
Mayor County, members of the City Council, Richard Brown, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. Today here I'm to talk about restrooms and comfort station policy and guidelines for the park system.
Coleman's not even here.
This is something that started with a desire for improved park and restroom facilities across the city. First of all, it came from the City Council's strategic plan policy goal to look at restrooms in parks. And then earlier this year, the Citizen Satisfaction Survey ranked and prioritized for park improvements as restrooms and the number of restrooms in cities' parks as the only statistically valid priority for improvement within the park system. As part of that, we needed to establish a policy that guides the placement of new permanent restroom facilities within the park and open space system. Going through this process, we realized that there was really three types of restrooms that should be within the park system. One is a permanent restroom, the second is a comfort station, and third is a temporary comfort station, which we're used to as a kaibo. And I'll detail these here in a second. The first one is a permanent restroom. This is one we're used to in a lot of different parks, at our pools, at our sports complexes. This has full utilities, it's hooked up to water, sewer, and has electricity. As we looked at where they should be placed within the park system, we thought that really a combination of three or more of the following activities in a park in close vicinity should be a trigger for a permanent restroom within the park. The first is a spray ground wading pool. The second is an open-air reservable picnic shelter, a large playground, a regional attraction, or a regional trailhead. So take three of these together within close vicinity of a park, and that would trigger the need for a permanent restroom. Additionally, these are other triggers for permanent restrooms within our park systems. Regional parks, the Graves Lakes, the Ewing Parks, the Union Parks. Community parks, such as Ashby, Pioneer, and Sargent. Sports complexes, our pools. Splash pools, these are similar to the pools at Ashby, Union, Crevero, and in Martin Luther King Jr. Park. Have two regional attractions such as the Rocket Slide and the Heritage Carousel, or an enclosed rental shelter for use by the renters only or for the public. Some of the future ones we'll look at will be a combination that they would have outside public access as well as access for the renters of the enclosed shelter. This map here shows all the bluish, purplish is all our existing permanent restrooms within the park system, and the red dots show where we're proposing future additions to the park system for permanent restrooms. Next is what we're calling a permanent comfort station. In a lot of ways, you could probably call this the county park style. This is a concrete structure, but really is a vault-style toilet. So no running water, solar-powered lights, hand sanitizer, a vault tank that must be serviced by a company, similar to the kaibos that we have in the park system now. When we look at this, we want to say that they had to have two or more of the following features in order to have a permanent comfort station within the park. An open-air shelter, it's rental or non-rental, a walking or bicycling loop of more than a half-mile in length, a spray ground, off-street parking, a community garden. We're saying there should be 1 per 9 holes of a golf course, one regional attraction, a dog park, or an 18-hole disc golf course. So take two of those things, depending on what the park looks like, would be a trigger for a permanent comfort station, but not enough elements to trigger a permanent restroom. So what we did is add on to this. This is the existing and proposed permanent restrooms. Oops, I'm sorry. As well as proposed comfort stations.
Richard,
yeah.
I must have missed it. What's the color designations? Purple?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So purple is existing restroom buildings, so permanent restrooms with flush toilets. Red is proposed additional permanent restrooms. And then the blue color is for a proposed comfort station. They're I apologize, they look a little bit different on the screen up here.
Yeah, what's the green?
Oh, I'm sorry, the green is the comfort stations.
Okay.
Okay.
The colors blended a little bit more on the map here than they do on my screen in the office.
When I'm looking at this, are you proposing adding a permanent at Union Park?
Only as part of the shelter renovation in the future. So the east shelter renovation there, the enclosed shelter, that would have a permanent restroom when that's renovated.
Good. That's one I was thinking of. You're
Yep.
talking about Bill and Nellie Ritchie shelter.
Yep, correct.
So Richard, the green ones that are like almost on top of the purple ones, how come they're so close in proximity to each other?
It depended on the activity within the park. For example, the golf course, we're saying there should be 2 per 18 holes. The one there's one at Franklin Community Gardens there proposed.
How about Easter Lake down there at the corner? There's like.
So the difference there at Easter Lake, so currently we have a permanent restroom at the Ashley Oakland playground area. We're proposed a permanent restroom down at the Lilac Arboretum to go with the disc golf course and the activities there.
Okay.
And then the comfort station is proposed to be on the east side over by the Cub Scout area.
Okay.
And then obviously there's the one up at the dog park as well. So
Okay.
big park, 357 acres. There's multiple activity centers there, so multiple restroom facilities. Last category here is what we call a temporary comfort station. This is commonly known as a kayabo to most people. This is a pretty popular structure in the park system right now, and one of the triggers for looking at how we handle restrooms in the future within the park system.
Who's it popular? Who's it popular with?
No one, but they seem to pop up out there quite a bit. No, we're looking at in the future as this policy is implemented that only triggers for comfort stations, these temporary types in the park system would be special events. If we have a large event in one of our park spaces, Western Gateway Park has a large event. Large tournaments at our sports complexes when we have a 120 or 140 team soccer tournament out of county. Wintertime use that has permanent restrooms is heavily used in the winter. Example of this would be probably on the north side of Grays Lake at the beach restroom area there. Grays Lake is so popular year-round that we would probably want to have one there in the winter as well. And then if a permanent restroom is closed for repairs, occasionally that does happen, and so we'd want to make sure that we have accommodations out there at that point as well. And finally, the implications of this policy, we want to make sure that we have consistent expectations for the elected officials, appointed officials, staff, and citizens, so that no matter who calls and has questions about our restroom facilities, that we can give them the same answer on how we handle that in the park system moving forward. Also, improved look of the park facilities. This goes to reducing the number of those temporary kaibos that are out there on a regular basis, moving through implementation of this and adding more of these restroom facilities, and getting rid of them from there based on the policy. And then there will be increased maintenance costs. If we do start to add more of these facilities within the park system, there will be a trigger at some point where we do need to add additional staff to make sure that we can maintain them and clean them on a regular basis. And I just close with this. The policy was adopted by the Park and Recreation Board on January 24th, 2017. We will look at it in the future, evaluate it as we get questions, comments, and any requests in the future. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Anybody? Bill?
Richard, good. I'm sure Councilman Coleman really appreciates this. It's his driving force. But I'm curious, when I go to some of the parks, sometimes I see it. How are we going to handle vandalism? That's got to be a hard cost for us. Do you have suggestions? And what have you guys seen as part of the problem with vandalism?
Yeah, we see vandalism out there quite a bit within the park system. I think that's part of having a park system. One of the things we're looking at, so for example, replacing those temporary kaibos, which are a plastic structure. They can be lit on fire, they can be knocked over, they can create a mess pretty easily. The permanent comfort stations are proposed to be almost entirely concrete structures that are very vandal-proof, resistant, and make it easier for our staff to maintain and make any repairs if needed. So essentially, they're a concrete bunker that has a sink, or a hand sanitizer and a toilet feature.
Skip?
Richard, have you taken a look at the Portland loos? I know that they're meant more for like a downtown area, but I think in some parking lots that in the park system they would be appropriate.
Yeah, we actually have. We reached out to the Portland Loo Company to see where it might be a good fit and how much they might cost. So we'll evaluate those when we have a permanent restroom that comes up that might be an opportunity to use that as a smaller footprint type restroom.
Do we have an estimated cost for the permanent comfort station?
Yeah, depending on the site. So one of the things we want to make sure is that they're fairly close to the street or a parking lot, so they're easily accessible for the company that has to service them. We estimate anywhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $40,000 based on how far they are from the parking lot.
And what do we spend on a Kaibo?
Kaibo, it's a monthly service. Last year we spent about $26,000 system-wide just to have them serviced. There's no cost for the Kaibo, but we do have to service them on a weekly basis.
So we'll still have to service these?
We'll still have to service
26.
them, but we expect that the servicing costs will be smaller because it's a 1,000-gallon tank that probably, instead of weekly, will have to maybe be serviced monthly. We'll have to look at that once we actually have one in the system. Our first one will actually be constructed in Fairmount Park this summer, so we can start to get a baseline on how often does it need to be serviced and how much does it cost based on that.
Thanks.
Anybody have anything else?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coleman has a question.
Well, Mr. Coleman has one.
Hold on, Chris. Can't hear him. Chris, go ahead, state it again. I'm gonna have to translate.
I am concerned that in the criteria that we listed, we didn't include parks or facilities at which we have employees. And my original concern came from knowing that we had employees and lots of liability and health issues for employees at places where we had no restrooms. And sometimes those employees were there for 7 or 8 hours a day. I'd like to see that in the criteria, and I'd like to see it fast forwarded dramatically where we have employees.
Okay.
Please.
Fast forward where we have employees.
Did you
All
catch
right.
that, Richard?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Anybody have anything else? All right, Richard, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep us up to date as it moves forward. All right, let's bring up Jennifer and let's talk about parking meters and potential parking garage long-term plans. Matt, you too.
I'm here for support.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Jennifer McCoy, City Traffic Engineer, and I have with me today Matt Anderson, Assistant City Manager. Together, we're going to be talking to you about some proposed ideas for Des Moines' parking system, both their on-street and off-street components. So I thought it'd be good to kind of talk a little bit about why we're proposing what we're proposing today. Starting with downtown is changing. Many of these numbers you see before you were in an article at the end of this year in the Des Moines Register. You can see we have 2,300 new residential units expected to come online by the end of 2017. We have new big employers coming downtown, like Come and Go building their headquarters and Cognizant deciding to stay here and expand. We have recently opened both the AC Hotel in Staybridge in the East Village, and we have the Iowa Event Center Hotel coming online as well. In addition, we have areas that are densifying, the Market District, the Bridge District, and our hopes for Walnut Street revitalization. With these residential units and all this activity coming downtown, it's really causing a change to downtown. And with that, the conversation about parking is changing. We are moving from our traditional 7 to 5 parking customer to a 24/7 parking customer. The more residential units we bring online, the more we have people living downtown, the more of a pressure that's putting on our on-street parking for those retail and commercial and restaurant type businesses. So we really are becoming a more dense urban downtown. I thought it was really interesting. Earlier this year, there were a couple articles in the Register which really debated this issue. There was an article that said, many agreed it's time to grow up Des Moines when it comes to parking. There was a letter to the editor that says, big city amenities come with big city traffic. Having a vibrant downtown goes hand in hand with the lack of parking. We just need to get over it. And, I think whereas it's interesting how the conversation is going, I do think we have adequate supply. We just need to manage it better. The last time council acted on big changes to our parking meter rates and our parking ramp rates was 2005. So it's been some time, and we really have changed in downtown. So that's kind of spurring a lot of the proposals you're seeing today. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about where we are with city-owned parking today. We have 5 existing parking garages and 1 park and ride. We have 1 new garage, the East 2nd Street parking garage, coming online later this fall. We have about 3,500 metered on-street parking spaces throughout downtown. We currently charge at our meters from 8 to 6, Monday to Friday. By the end of this year, a third of our meters will take credit cards. A majority of all of our meters take smart cards and coin, but a third of them in addition will take credit cards. We have 4 hourly durations, 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour, and 10-hour meters. We have 4 hourly rates at our meters, 45 cents, 60 cents, 75 cents, and $1.25. Our garages are free on the weekends right now unless there's a special event. However, we do currently charge at 3rd and Court and 4th and Grand for activities in the Court District area on Saturday nights after 4 p.m. So this is how our on-street meter rate structure sits today. As you can see, the entire East Village is 60 cents an hour. The West Side Core is $1.25, and these rates have been in place since 2009. In 2005, Council had approved kind of a 4-year rate increase, and so the $1.25 has been in place since 2009, along with these other rates like the 75 cents an hour. That core is basically Watson Powell to Cherry, the River to 10th Street. What we're also seeing is a big change in our garage occupancies. These are some numbers you saw earlier this year as well. Our garages operate most efficiently when they are 80 to 90% occupied, and as you can see, we're getting into that kind of ideal range at 3rd and Court, 4th and Grand, and 8th and Mulberry. A lot of that is with the 5th and Walnut being closed and the shifting of parkers and filling up of those other facilities. And of course, 9th and Locust and 5th and Keogh are also picking up in the amount of occupancy as far as how occupied they are. In 2016, we had a facilities conditions report, which we presented to you about earlier this year. That same firm took a look at our parking rates because we felt like looking at our rates and how we operate was an important piece of that conversation of not only our needs for our system for infrastructure needs, but maybe how we could look at revenues and how things are operating. They looked at what's being done nationwide, and they also compared us to 3 similar cities, Omaha, Kansas City, and Columbus, Ohio. So this is how we compared. If you look at our meter rates per hour, we are on the lower end with the exception of the rates we're charging in our core right now. Garage rates are fairly similar. The garage daily max is fairly in line with our comparison cities, and the event rate is fairly in line, although it looks like Columbus does go a bit higher than what we have traditionally gone. The study overall had several recommendations. We touched on these a little bit when we presented to you earlier this year as far as bigger things to consider. So they recommended higher rates in the core, in the Western Core, but also in the East Village. They recommended reduced hourly times for turnover to help support those retail, restaurant, commercial businesses. They recommended charging on Saturday and looking at enhanced payment technologies, more ways to pay at the meter besides maybe traditional smart card and coin. So now I'm going to go into some of the proposed changes. This change here is one that you saw earlier this fall. We had talked to council in an earlier work session about how by policy right now we don't charge for meters when they're taken out for a long-term building obstruction project. They're taken out for if they're covered for a special event, if they're covered for 2-week or less right-of-way obstruction, to do some utility work, and or a special parking permit, we charge the full daily rate. But when we take them out for building obstructions, for those longer terms, we are not. Instead, what we have been doing is charging just for the square footage of the parking lane. So you can see the difference in cost. It's not that we've been recouping nothing, but it's a substantial difference. Site A would be similar to like the AC Hotel, where they took a quarter of the block and meters on 2 areas, or the Randolph when it was redone. Site B would be a larger project like your 7-Eleven High, your Come and Goes, the big Staybridge project here in the East Village. So just looking at these numbers, assuming we had 4 Site A's and 4 Site B's, in that 18-month period, we are losing around $850,000 of revenue. And right now we're bringing in about 50 grand in building construction permits. So that difference is about 800,000 that we would be, could be recouping. This is just current practice. This isn't by formal policy. At the time, council said, well, what are our neighbors doing? We want to make sure we're not going to be, overly harsh maybe on developers compared to what our neighbors are doing. So we did do a survey of our neighbors, Kansas City, Cedar Rapids, Omaha, and Minneapolis, to talk to them about what do they do related to meters and building permits. So Kansas City charges $3 per meter per weekday. Cedar Rapids charges $10 per meter per weekday and $5 per weekend day. Omaha charges their full daily meter rate of $8 to $15 a day. And Minneapolis also charges the full daily meter rate, and this is for when meters are taken out for building obstruction work. Next, I want to move into some other proposed changes that we had. We're calling this our East Village pilot. These are some new ideas for the East Village, and I wanted to let you know we have been out to talk to the East Village board. And one thing and they were very supportive of our ideas, and one thing we thought was interesting, we call it the quote of the night, is, one of the business owners mentioned they don't get complaints about the cost of parking, they get complaints about the inability to find an open parking meter. And I think this graphic down below really shows that. You can see if you have underpriced curb parking, your parking is 100% full. People are driving around and searching. They're spending 3 to 4 minutes just to find a space. They feel very frustrated by the time they park. Whereas if you have right-priced curb parking, and right-priced curb parking, similar to our garages, is that 80 to 90% occupied. So you have about 1 space on each curb face that's just constantly empty. So when you drive up, there's a place to park, but you have to price it right. You have to have those hourly turnover times set right. And so that's really what I think that quote of the night really kind of encompassed and showed, is the need to look to right price our curb parking. So here's what we're proposing, and these are the ideas we talked to the East Village board about. We're currently 60 cents in the entire east side. I know it's been that way for a long time, but I don't see how we can really make a distinction between what's happening on the west side, where we've been $1.25, and how the east side has really changed. It's really grown and changed in how it's done. So we're, similar to the west side, proposing to create a core zone area. That core zone area would be raised to $1.25 an hour to match what's happening on the west side. There'd be a second tier, which would be 10-hour meters, which would be 75 cents an hour. So the idea would be if you were either a resident or you were an employee and you had to rely on on-street parking, there's parking available. You just may have to park a little bit further out, but it still would be reasonably priced. We're also proposing to charge on Saturdays in both the on-street and also in the new parking ramp that we're opening up. The idea behind this was we talked a lot about the East Village about different options, and it's, they said, okay, well, if we went with our current structure where our ramps are free on Saturdays and our meters are free on Saturdays, they said people choose to park at the meter right in front. They sit there from 5 o'clock Friday till 8 a.m. Monday morning, and they take all that good parking. And so, or they come in early for their Saturday night restaurant shift, and they park right in front of that meter. So when that patron shows up to go to that restaurant, parking's not available. So there's a lot of this has been coming from requests from the East Village of how to better manage this problem that we're having. And in both these cases, meters and the ramp would be proposed to remain free on Sunday.
Are we only going to charge in the East Village on Saturday, or is that going to be in the core on the other side of the river?
That's a good question, Councilman Gatto. We are looking as a pilot project to test this in the East Village only to start out. And then we could come back to you about how successful it was, how it worked, those types of things. You could then decide if you wanted to expand it further onto the west side of the river as well. But we thought to kind of pilot this idea and this concept would be to take the East Village and use that as a kind of a test case. So here's what that would look like. I showed you earlier how the whole area was a 60 cent per hour zone. This would be, the pink represents the $1.25 and the blue represents the 10-hour meters. So your pink would be basically your $1.25 from Robert D. Ray to the west side of Penn, from the south side of Des Moines to the north side of Court. So if you're an employee or resident and you need to have cheaper parking, you can park on Court Avenue, on Penn, on Des Moines Street, and you're a 2-block walk to Locust in the heart of the core. So that's just kind of, there's still options and close options. And the bridges as well would remain 75 cents an hour, 10-hour meters. So that's also an option for people to park and walk as well.
And the state parking garage is still free
Yep.
on Penn and Grant.
Yep, and the state garage is still free. And if you didn't want to pay the $1.25 an hour or you had a longer stay, our new City Hall garage will be open as well.
I think we need to point out that state garage, while they are in session, is not available.
It does get full and it can get challenging to park up there.
They don't allow outside parking while the state house is in session.
Okay.
So can you talk about Court Avenue? Because you said people that didn't want to pay that would walk over to Court Avenue. Court Avenue's got its own parking challenges.
I'm talking about East Court.
East Court.
Here,
okay.
yes. That they could park for cheaper on East Court and further down into the Market District. Yes.
Streets blue.
So one of the other things that came out of that report are looking at, as I mentioned, improved parking meter payment technologies. As I mentioned, we have had a focus on upgrading our meters in our high activity areas to credit card meters. This does provide an additional payment option, and some of the other pros is enforcement currently stays as is. What that means essentially with the credit card meter, the display still changes from red to green. Enforcement looks for that light to know if the meter has money on it or if it's expired. However, these meters do come with a higher maintenance fee just because they're more electronic, they're talking to the cloud, they're running credit card processing, and they come with a higher monthly maintenance fee. The meters cost $5.75 a month just to be on the street between the wireless fee we pay for the cell service and the database maintenance fee. So it does have kind of some higher monthly fees.
Do we not charge for that fee when they use that credit card, additional charge? Or do we eat that cost?
What we do at these meters is we make them pay for a minimum of $1 worth of parking. So in where we have them right now in the East Village, that might equate to a little bit over an hour. So you can't just put a quarter in and then charge. So we've set a minimum that way. It's my understanding that's the way we have to, if any way we can pass the fees on to the customer. We can't pass the credit card transaction fee onto the customer on how things are set up with our finance and other folks. So.
Okay.
But the parking system pays for that.
Yeah, I know it, but we're still, okay.
So another option would be to look at a pay-by-phone option. Pay-by-phone would roll out a credit card option at every meter in downtown. What you see in the upper, I guess, right corner here is what Omaha has done. So you'd see a sticker on the meter. It tell you what zone you're in and your meter number. You can pay through an app. You can pay by calling. If you have an account set up, some services even allow you to pay with a text message. So we could get our own app like Park Des Moines. And with this, you only pay as used. Instead of that $5.75, it's just a per transaction fee. It can range by the vendor from 15 cents to 50 cents, but you just pay if it gets used. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't cost us kind of a monthly management fee. That transaction fee also does include the stickers, the signs, promotional items, the creation of the private app, and marketing materials. So it sounds really great, but some of the cons could be is not everyone may feel comfortable paying by phone. However, the meter would still take either a smart card or coin, and our credit card meters would continue to take a credit card at those points as well if somebody would actually use their card instead of paying by phone. One thing about this is the meter display does not actually change when the payment is applied. So from a parking enforcement standpoint, they're driving down the street, they see a meter flashing red, they have to check the app to see if somebody paid by phone or if somebody actually didn't pay and their meter is expired. So there's more of a two-step process. There are some changes that have been made in technology that can help make that a little more of a seamless process, but so we're hoping it doesn't double enforcement time to write a ticket, but that it does have kind of more of a two-step process. And for the user, the vendors we talked to have said that they would get a note that says, you won't see your display change, but the City of Des Moines has received your money. You're okay to kind of move on and do your business. But it's just a little bit different than what we've been used to seeing.
Can we put that additional fee on to the user?
we can't the credit card fee, but the additional fees, some cities pass that on. Some cities don't because they want to encourage the pay by phone. So that would be a decision council would have to make on how to do that. And we'd have to talk to our finance folks to see what we're able to pass on to the user. And it may be that if we can't pass it on, then we set a minimum that you have to pay for at least $1.50's worth of parking or something rather than 25 cents or something like that. So just kind of to recap, I talked about a lot of things today, and I'll just kind of recap where we're at. So we talked about changing the internal policy to recover that lost revenue from meters taken out as part of building obstructions. Just looking at, I gave you some numbers on that. That $850,000 was looking at kind of an 18-month construction period. So if you kind of bring that back to an annual, we're looking at about $600,000 annually that could be added on to our parking meter revenues from where we're at right now. The pilot in the East Village, we talked about raising the rates to $1.25 in the core. Changing the 10-hour meters are 60 cents right now, they go to 75 cents. Creating that 2-hour parking in the core for that turnover to support those retail, restaurant, commercial businesses. And then providing 10-hour outside of the core. Charging on Saturdays for meters and in the garage. And we would look to have this all coincide with the new garage opening in fall of this year, so everything kind of comes online with this pilot project. And just looking at those changes together, we're looking at an additional $1 million in parking revenue that we could get annually. And that is, right now we bring in about 1.9 million, so that's over 30% additional increase in annual parking revenue. And that's just on the east side. If these ideas work, and we rolled out those same ideas onto the west side, our East Village has about 16% of our total parking meters, so you'd be looking at doing that to 80% of the rest of your system, you would really see a substantial impact on revenues. But I don't want to just say it's about revenue. It's about helping to support the change in downtown. We are changing to a 24/7 city, and this is going to help us to be able to create that turnover to support those businesses. The residents won't be taking, or the workers won't be taking up that highly valuable on-street parking. It's going to create that turnover to support those other activities that we're seeing downtown now. And I guess I would just kind of say, we could try it. We could do a pilot for a year. We could come back to you, we could be able to show you, well, here's how much revenue we created in the garages, and here's how much revenue we were able, here's how much it cost us to run that garage on Saturday, and here's what the business owners think of charging on Saturday, and we could be able to give you that input. So, and doing all that just with existing kind of city resources and staff. So with that, I guess I would open it up.
Joe?
Well, actually,
Yeah.
do you, okay.
I don't have any questions, just a comment. Thank you. I joined you at the East Village meeting, and I'm glad you made the comment that it's not about revenue. This is something that it's an ongoing problem in the East Village where someone comes and just parks in front of a business and stays there the entire time because of how we have the meters set up. And so this will help the business, not hinder it. And I think we need to be aware of that. It's not an additional revenue source. And I choose not to look at it that way. I choose that this is going to increase revenues for the folks in the East Village, the business owners that are struggling with parking down there, and they were very supportive of this idea. I'm glad that. I kind of wish we would have done it sooner, to be honest with you. So we'll see how it plays out. I think it will be very beneficial, and we can take a look at it in a year or two and see how it is there, and maybe we can look at the other side of the river in the western gateway portion of it. Thank you. It was very informational.
I have one comment. When I look at the cons, the pay by phone bothers me because it means that our parking enforcement people, every time there's a blinking red light, they have to get out, pull up the app to see if that person has paid by phone or not. And to me, that just seems very time consuming, plus their vehicles are parked. I mean, when I'm downtown now and there's a traffic enforcement vehicle stopped, you have to wait and go around. I just can't imagine the confusion that would cost.
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about that. Every vendor's sorry, go ahead.
And
yes.
Then one other thing, if we could make it so it were easier to purchase the parking cards. Right now, I think you have to go to City Hall or the police station.
There's City Hall, the YMCA, 9th and Locust Garage, or 3rd and Court Garage. Typically in areas that have, we wouldn't want a machine that takes cash in a place where we don't have eyes on it. So that's been kind of the challenging piece of that. But we can definitely look at expanding some
Or
locations.
get the word out, have it available, during certain events or something, so more people would use the smart cards.
I think that's a good point. People really like the smart card once they use it and get used to it. I was just going to add on, so some of the vendors, and they all vary, and if we were to look at pay by phone, we would have to do a full RFP, so we could lay out what we want out of that system. But they do have the ability you could pull up the entire block on your laptop, let's say, in the enforcement vehicle, and they could see right away that's a green spot, that's a red spot. So it wouldn't necessarily be stopping the car. They would be able to do some pieces from within their vehicle as well. So if we were to move forward with that, we could look at making sure the vendor supplies a good, easy, quick reference for our enforcement officers, so that, you're right, so that they doesn't take time getting out of the vehicle and clogging up traffic or other things like that. It's a good point.
Have you tracked the sales of the smart cards between City Hall and the interim City Hall compared to sales?
I have that information, I do, but I don't have it readily available, but I could provide that. You just want to know if people are finding us in our new location to charge up the
Exactly.
cards. Yep.
Yes.
Yep, I can pull the transaction information for you on that.
Thank
Get
you.
that back.
Bill?
Yeah. Jennifer, have you done any thought about expanding the sale of the smart cards, like maybe to grocery stores, even convenience stores? I think more people take advantage of it. And the reason I ask is because, when I travel to Canada, we have to buy calling cards. Calling cards you can get anywhere, and then I can put time back on them. So have you looked into possibly making it very convenient to put smart cards out there?
We have looked at that. The only thing is we would have to preload them, so we'd have to, let's say, we'll just take Hy-Vee, for example. We'd have to figure out how that would work if we give them $10, $40 pre-charged smart cards. They'd almost have to figure out, do we make them pay for that ahead of time, and then they just charge a customer and deal with it that way? It's actually be preloaded, whereas a gift card or something like that is not charged till it's used. We don't have a way to have a vendor like Hy-Vee charge money onto that card with that current technology that we have on the smart card. It could be done. The YMCA, I think, was a really good example. It was our first kind of private partner that we partnered with, and but to get a machine there, we had to get connection back to the office and everything like that. And so it to definitely be looked at. If we wanted to do a fuller scale program, we'd have to figure out just how we lay that out. To be
I think it'd be a great idea. Plus, if I buy the card and I don't use it and it's gone, we still made money on the deal, so something to think about.
Christine?
I just want to follow up because I think that that's a very valid conversation that we're having about the smart cards. That's the one complaint I hear. People don't know where to go to get the card. So anything that we can do to expand accessibility in public areas, and libraries. And I think even if we could look at having locations outside the city of Des Moines, because people that are coming from the suburbs have not a clue where to go to get the cards, and you're constantly trying to help them navigate where they need to go. So, and most people don't even know where City Hall is right now, in all honesty.
In the police station, you can't get up the main steps where the machine is. Even if we had something on our city website where I could order a card and give you my credit card, and then you would send me a prepaid card, would be helpful.
Okay.
Preloaded cars at Hy-Vee would be very good. People would buy them. I know you probably have to give a certain percentage back to Hy-Vee, but I mean you'd have to figure out what that you should look into that, and maybe they would like to partner with this private-public partnership. They've always been, or a convenience store, a come and go, or a quick trip where you can have preloaded cards. That in the suburbs is a great opportunity for us to get that out.
Okay, good ideas. Mayor, did you have something on this? I was going to bring Matt Anderson up to talk about the parking garages. So.
Okay, don't want to hold him up very long. I know he's been just waiting to jump up there, but could you give us sort of an update, sort of some of the questions you're here, I think, hinted at it, but give us a breakdown. How many pay cash? How many use a credit card? How many use a smart card?
Sure. So I
We have a full understanding of how people actually are paying for parking.
I did have, and this is at our credit card meters because those are the easiest to audit because we can communicate to those through the web. Our other meters, you have to kind of hand visit each one. So overall, looking at all of our credit card meters in the downtown, we are about 63% coin, 30% credit card, and 7% smart card. And we've seen that credit card, as we've rolled out more credit card meters, we've seen that credit card number go from 20% up to 30% over the past 4 or 5 years as we've rolled out more credit card meters. So we're still seeing a large portion of coin. And I don't know if that's because I don't know if it's the smart card's harder to find, or they know for sure every meter is going to take coin, or we're just creatures of habit here in Des Moines, Iowa. And I think part of it is too, our rates have traditionally been pretty low, 60 cents an hour. That's not much coin to take with you, but when it goes up to $1.25 or things like that, it's more coins to carry. So you start looking at other options to pay, which our credit card meters are focused in those higher activity, higher rate areas to give people more options to pay.
Or bigger pockets.
Or bigger pockets, yes.
But I find it interesting that you're only doing 7% on the smart card, so it'd be interesting to see if you could expand it and see if that boosts it up. But I don't know how good people feel about loading up a bunch of money onto a smart card unless they're parking a lot. Mm-hmm. And then in which case it does make sense. Let's get to the garages.
Okay.
How many meters do you have? What's the percentage of your meters that take credit cards, though?
So currently, right now, it is about 20%. By the end of this year, it'll be a third. So yeah, if you were to have more credit card and you knew you had credit card everywhere, perhaps that number would be higher.
Yeah, that would be much higher.
You're talking about credit cards or smart cards?
The credit cards.
Okay, so and your credit card is now what?
20%.
30. Our credit card meters represent about 22% of our meters in the downtown. We are bringing in
what part of your revenue?
30% at those meters.
Percent? Oh, at those meters?
At the credit card meters.
That's only at the
overall. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. That's all.
Good morning, Matty Anderson, Assistant City Manager. I'll be brief. Piggybacking on the parking meter discussion, I wanted to give you a quick update on the parking garages. Every couple of years, we get approached by a broker, either local or out of state, who asks us if we have an interest in selling our parking system. Usually those are big national companies that are looking to come in and lock, stock, and barrel buy the whole system. And those discussions kind of go back and forth, and then they just kind of peter out. And so it's not really an issue that we've taken very seriously. But we're getting more inquiries into purchases of individual garages and even the entire parking system. So we feel that the timing is right to take a stronger look at that. And so we are going to be working with our legal and financial team to just a general discussion of should we sell the system, what are the pros and cons of doing that. We use the parking system as an economic development tool. So if we lose that control, if we sell that away, will we lose that ability and lose that tool? Can we sell it? We know we have some hurdles the way we did finance the lease purchase agreement with the City Hall garage. We pledged the entire revenues from the parking system, including the meters, to hit the debt coverage ratio on that garage. So we know that we may have some legal limitations in that lease purchase agreement if we can even sell off any of assets. And then how do we sell it? Does it make sense to sell individual garages to individual owners to encourage competition? Does it make some sense to sell off the entire garage system? We'll probably find a larger pool of national buyers if we do that. They'll bring some cohesion in operation. So there's a lot of questions that we're going to work through. We have actually our first kickoff meeting this afternoon with finance and legal to talk about that. We're bringing in Allers and PFM, who helped us with the lease purchase agreement on the City Hall garage, so we can really get an understanding of the legal and financial commitments that we have. We'll bring back updates to you periodically. There's probably some garages are going to be easier to analyze and easier to sell than others. The Third and Court garage, we have our partnership with the federal government, the GSA, on that, where we don't actually own the land underneath it, and they control a certain number of spaces. So there are some encumbrances on that garage in particular. The Fifth and Keogh garage, where you've got a mixed use of housing and the garage, that has some encumbrances with it. So we'll be bringing that back periodic updates. It's not going to be an easy task. We're not going to have a couple meetings and have an answer, but we'll continue to dive into that. We definitely have interested parties, and so now's a good time to look at it. As Jennifer said, occupancies are going up. We're going to be raising rates slowly. So this is a good time. Maybe we do have some value there that we can capitalize, and I think we could put the garages back on the tax rolls, which is something we don't talk a lot about, but that'd be another benefit. We think that a private operator may have the ability to operate more efficiently than we do, and in a more entrepreneurial way. But we need to look at doing that in a way that continues to spur economic development and occupancy of our downtown buildings. And then Councilwoman Hensley has placed an agenda item on tonight's agenda to look at a similar system as there are cities around the country, Indianapolis being one that many of you have heard of, who have done the same thing and privatized their parking meter systems. So that can also be something that we can take a look at in the future too. So we can talk about that a little more formally tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on. We're going to have a presentation on the contract sales inspection program. Sue Ann Donovan.
Mayor, Council, Sue Ann Donovan, Neighborhood Inspection Zoning Administrator. I'm going to keep this pretty brief this morning. We've been through this a couple times. Why are we discussing contract sales? One of the priorities set by City Council was to improve the housing stock. It's in your strategic plan. It came out in Capital Crossroads. Came out in a strategies for effectively addressing vacant blighted properties, Plan DSM, Tomorrow Plan, and every neighborhood plan that was ever completed for the city. Part of the strategic plan that the Community Development Department took on was, first of all, was rental inspections, and we've beefed that up and we've rewritten that code. So the current owner says the owner must have a home inspection completed. This is part of the contract sales. Give a copy of the inspection report to the buyer, but there's no requirement to complete repairs. So there's no effort in our ordinance to make sure that sellers and buyers are bringing properties into compliance with even basic habitability issues. We did increase the code enforcement on the rental units. So if a rental unit is under notice of violation, it must be brought into compliance by the seller before it transfers. They're still in our rental system, and we're not going to let them transfer the property on a contract without bringing it into compliance. So the next thing we looked at as part of our key issues on property maintenance was a proposed code change, which will come to you tonight, to require an inspection before the contract is entered using the same requirements as our rental code. This is not bringing the property into compliance with new construction. It's compliance with the property maintenance code as set out in our rental inspection. We feel that if there are life and safety issues, that we wouldn't want that property inhabited until the life and safety issues are addressed. So they couldn't move in if there was a faulty electrical or plumbing or mechanical issue or some major structural issue that would make it unsafe to live in until it's brought into compliance. Currently, we're suggesting mirroring the rental code side where it's 30 days to bring this property into compliance, but we acknowledge that sometimes compliance is going to take longer, so the owner and the contract buyer can come in and talk to staff about a renovation agreement to give them more time to do the repairs over a certain amount of time. The enforcement piece is referral to Housing Appeals Board, just like we would do with a rental inspection. And the Housing Appeals Board could give an extension of time, could issue fines if they deem it appropriate. In the very worst case scenario, refer it to legal for prosecution. As I said, next steps, the ordinance is going to be on the agenda tonight. We have in the budget to recruit and hire 2 additional inspectors to begin the program. I'd like to point out this is a habitability issue. This isn't an issue of getting in the middle of who buys or sells real estate. It's simply to make sure that the property is habitable and that we maintain our housing stock in our neighborhoods.
All right, anybody, Bill?
So, Ann, I know we were talking about at one time, if a contract buyer and seller can agree that there needs to be some improvements or some conditions that have to be made, that the buyer could potentially do that work themselves.
Correct. Within our concept and within the ordinance, the seller and buyer would come into the table and they'd say, okay, we have to do it re-roof and the buyer's going to do it and we need 18 months to re-roof the house and it's not leaking right now. Okay, can we work out an agreement where the buyer can do that work, but the seller has to sign off on that also. So it would be a mutual agreement by both parties that someone's going to do that.
And is there a set time frame that they have to complete that by?
I think it's going to be case by case, and staff sort of looks at it that way. It's going to be case by case. You know, sometimes the roof isn't going to be leaking, and so maybe it's just sort of, you know, flaking and it's not curling.
Mm-hmm.
And so can we give them more time to do that? Yeah, that seems appropriate. If it's leaking, maybe it's a different time frame. It's going to be based on economics. You know, who has the money to put it in? How long do we want to give them to do that? So yeah, I think it's going to be case by case, and both parties come in and sit down and say, okay, either the seller's going to do it or the buyer's going to do it. If the buyer doesn't do it, the seller's going to do it. Type of an arrangement.
How would you do enforcement on something like that? Would you take a look at building permits or complaint driven? How would you see that working?
On the renovation agreement side?
Right.
That would be sitting down with us and we'd say, okay, 18 months to do this or 3 months to do that. We put it in our computer system. It would trigger a reinspection and we'd go to the building department and say, did they pull the permit? We'd go out and meet on the property and say, okay, where are you with this? Are you hammering nails? Have you started? What's the progress? So it would be based on re-inspections.
Okay, thank you.
If they don't do it, then who's responsible? Buyer, seller? I mean,
both. The way the renovation agreement would be, both agree to do it. If they don't do it, then it moves into Housing Appeals Board, where more time could be granted by the Housing Appeals Board, or they both go into a court system, and then the judge gets to decide who's supposed to do those repairs.
So if I sold a house to someone and they said they were going to do the completed within 18 months and they don't, then I'm also responsible for making sure that gets done 18 months as the seller.
Correct.
Okay.
Linda?
My question is who's going to do the inspections? I know that there are quite a few good home inspectors out there. If I want to sell a house on contract, could I or the buyer pay for our own home inspection, or does it have to be through one of the city inspectors?
The way it's written now, it would have to be through a city inspector. And that's easier for us to monitor the program if we're on the front end and we're walking it all the way through. If you have a private inspector come in with an inspection report, we weren't out there, we didn't see what they saw. So then we have to enter a renovation agreement on something that we didn't have any knowledge of what the actual inspection looked like, which could trigger us going back out there anyway to see what really needs to be done.
Could we see a copy of what the city inspectors use now? Do they have an inspection report? I mean, when I look at a home inspection that's been done, every lender in town will accept that home inspection report. It's a very detailed report with pictures, and these guys are pretty knowledgeable, so we get a pretty good picture of what's going on with the house. So I'd be interested to see what the city inspectors, what their criteria is compared to what some of the home inspections are that we see that a lender would require. Oftentimes banks say, let me see the home inspection.
I appreciate that point. We have a list of private inspectors right now that can do contract inspections. And I will be quite honest, there are a few that do it to the level that you say with the pictures, and it's a lengthy, good report. The other people, they're not giving us what we would even deem as appropriate under a rental inspection. we have a form in the computer that comes out, but what we're really looking at is requirements under Chapter 60, which is the rental code. So we're all looking at the electrical, we're looking at the plumbing, but right now we don't have really a checklist for that. It's based on what the code says and what they put into an inspection report.
And I know that I have seen some inspections that have been done through, I don't know if it was a city inspector, but it was through that list, because some lenders, if I'm doing a community investment loan for a buyer, they have to go and they have a list that they get from the city. And I've seen some of those inspections and they've been very poor.
They're very
And I'm
poor.
thinking, why would we even consider what this person is saying rather than what a certified home inspector would say, or somebody that we all trust? I think we should get those people off our list. If they're not doing the jobs, get them off the list.
At the very least, we will move to get them off the list. I've already taken one off the list that did such a poor inspection that I think they did it at McDonald's. It seriously was one where we went in on a rental inspection and wrote it up quite heavily, and the contract inspection came through and had none of the health and safety issues that we had pointed out. I sent the inspector back out to get me pictures. That person could not have walked in that house and done that inspection, so I took him off of our list. There's another couple parties on there that if we're going to go to private companies doing the inspections, I would take a serious look at whether or not they should be on the list or not. I think it would be more cost effective for the seller to have us do it rather than a home inspector, but this is totally up to council to decide who does the pre-inspection.
Isn't that why in the approved budget, the 2 additional inspectors were put into that budget?
Correct.
Okay. Otherwise, we wouldn't need the 2 additional inspectors.
Well, the problem with having somebody else do the inspection is they do it, they hand us a sheet of paper. We have not gone in there. We're trying to do a renovation agreement on somebody's outside inspection. Then we're going to go back in at the end of the compliance time and we're going to say, well, wait a second, they missed this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to start that whole process over. If we're in there at the start and we're in there doing the compliance plan, then we're there the whole time. And it just makes, from an enforcement standpoint, it makes it much easier for us.
But Swen, in a report that I saw, the contract sales are a very small percentage of properties that are in disrepair. It looks, from the report that I saw, it looks like your rentals are a bigger issue than the contract sales.
20% of the contract sales are subnormal. That's about equal to the rental. Now, we've already taken steps to bring the rental properties up to normal or above. This is just the second phase of that effort. 20% of the contract sales are subnormal. 6% of total sales across the city are contract sales that are subnormal. But if you take the pot of contract sales, 20% of those are below normal. So that's the crux of what we're trying to get to.
Linda made reference to this report, and I talked to somebody on the phone over the weekend that made reference to the report. Did we get a copy of that report?
I'm thinking you got a copy of it way back when we were talking about strategic.
Send us a copy
Sure.
again, just so, because I
Absolutely.
was caught off guard by some of the quotes that were made.
Absolutely.
Bill?
I just got one more. Some of these get brought in from tax sales, where they try to flip them right away. And this is more of a comment. Where are we in looking at what the city can do to have an opportunity to grab those tax sale properties and have the first right of refusal on that? To me, we can be identifying a problem right away. We could analyze, we can do the work ahead of time, and instead of, like I'm seeing now, most out-of-state companies, not even in Des Moines, but out-of-state, are buying these things on tax sales, and nothing gets done. They're trying to flip them as quick as they can. Where are we? I mean, maybe that's more of for the city manager, but I see that if we can get to, thank you, Phil, if we can get to a point where we can have like the land bank and be able to get these properties and be responsible of how we get them out there, we can cut a lot of this stuff out.
Good morning, council members. Phil Delafield, Community Development Director. Mr. Gray, your question is quite appropriate. We actually are doing those as we speak and trying to pick those up that are available that have perhaps a good opportunity. For instance, tonight there are 2 on your agenda that you saw. There are the challenge, of course, is that we don't have a budget to acquire some of those properties and then renovate those properties. So we need to have a partner in hand. So what we do is we look at the list that the county provides us before it's made public. We then work with Polk County supervisors to waive any fines and assessments that are against the property. And then we shop it with our partners to see if there are any partners that are available to do the work that believe that they can do it in the marketplace. So yes, we are doing those things. Yes, it could be expanded, but we would need a budget, or we would need to expand our list of partners that have some ability to do that work.
I agree. I'd like to see us move forward on that. We give $1 million to the NDC, and they do just that. They've done. I'm so pleased to be on that board. It's done wonders around the city. But in the neighborhoods where, we're here to protect our neighborhoods. We need to be moving forward on this, and I'm sure we can get creative in getting funding for it, but we need to set something up and not kick this can down the road. I'd like to see. I appreciate everything you're doing, Phil. That's the kind of stuff that we need to see. But between all of us sitting here, and you see out-of-state businesses, not somebody that's showing any interest, just trying to make money out of Des Moines and doing it in a pretty shoddy method, that really gets the best of me. So I think I'd like to see this moved up a little bit on the fast track, Scott, if we could. And let's put our heads together and figure out how we can get this done. Thank you.
Well, and just to follow up on that, Phil, and I think that we talked a little bit about this, but you've got the Iowa Department of Economic Development that actually has potentially a zero interest loan that would be the funding source that we would need to be able to go out and acquire those properties, and especially if it's zero interest. That is a perfect line of credit that would be available that would really help us as we're trying to put together, assemble the land, and maybe be the starting point for the land bank.
Yes, Mrs. Hensley, we are looking into that program now to find out the specifics, so we hope to bring that back to you in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Ann, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Mr. Manager, are we...
You can take comments now or tonight.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have any comments that they would like to make on any of these subjects this morning, or anything else that has come to your mind? We'll open up for public comment. Looks like we have an individual wandering up to the front here.
One over here too. Good morning. My name is Pam Carmichael. I'm the Executive Director of Home Incorporated, and I live at 1504 Thompson Avenue. I wanted to be able to attend the public hearing tonight on contract sales, but I will be out of town, so I wanted to say a few things this morning. The Home Inc. is in favor of the contract sale proposal made by code enforcement. And one of the reasons for that is that we get on both sides of what we do in our rehabilitation activities and also on our counseling activities. We're impacted by some of these contract sales. Not all of them. There are good contract sales, and I had the opportunity to attend the public meeting that they had on that and hear a lot of contract sellers talk about that. Well, in my opinion, if the contract sellers good contract sellers should not be afraid of this ordinance. It does not say that they would have to repair the property. It does put some onus on them as far as making sure that it does get rehabbed, but we don't have problems with good contract sellers. We have problem with both on our end in going into a neighborhood and trying to improve that neighborhood and improve the values on that when we have a lot of contract sale properties, particularly one of the neighborhoods I'm talking about is Capitol Park, where they're bringing down the values. It's been in the Des Moines newspaper, all of that type of thing. We've also heard from people, we see it all the time, what you do is you flip. And that is people are coming in, buying some of these properties and flipping them very quickly. In those instances, usually we will get a call at some point from the buyer People do not understand that when they get the current inspection on contract properties, it's a buyer beware. That's all it is. It just tells you that this is a condition of your property if you buy it. A lot of our clients, particularly immigrants that are coming into our community, don't understand that, and they buy it anyway. And then we get calls because the furnace, we had one call about a year ago that the woman was living in the house, furnace went out in the winter, so she plugged in a bunch of space heaters. Then she had a small fire and had problems with the electrical, and then finally the roof started to leak. Now, a lot of people, because of the affordable housing rental situation in town, will go to a contract sale because that's what they can afford. But when they do that, many times they're putting themselves at jeopardy, and they do not have the money to repair them. And then they sit there and they continue to degrade the neighborhoods. In a good contract sale situation, you would have, and I'm not opposed to contract sales at all. I mean, we have 6 of them. They're good sales. They're sales that we worked with the clients on. They had not an opportunity to go to bank, but those homes were in good condition. They were not brand new homes, but they were rehabbed homes that suited their needs, and they were rehabilitated up to the city codes. So I would urge the council to take this into a lot of consideration, because you will hear people that do not want this to happen, and because in some instances there are things that the individuals need to do, but right now there's nothing that says that an individual moving into that house has to take responsibility for that once they buy it. This is not known. For those people who want to buy a property and rehab it, the idea of having a rehab plan for them that they can follow, I think is a good one. If that was their intention, to move into the home and rehab it, like some of the old urban homesteaders did. But I urge you to take this into serious consideration and to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council. My name is Christopher Schubert. I represent Contract Exchange Corporation. We've been doing business in contract sales for 36 years. And I just want to start out by saying that our organization likes the intent of this ordinance, and no one is more concerned about the values of homes in these neighborhoods than us, because we are currently servicing 414 contracts in the city of Des Moines. And if the housing stock improves, that improves the value of our collateral and improves the conditions of the neighborhood and allows people to refinance and sell their homes more easily, and this virtuous cycle of lending in these neighborhoods continues. So, like I say, in 2014, we took the step to get a mortgage banker's license. And so with that comes quarterly reporting of our loan activity, annual reporting of our financial condition. We have audited financial statements, and including direct examination by the Iowa Division of Banking. Core to our servicing, I think, and what is important to a lot of people, a service that we provide is escrow administration, the paying of taxes and insurance. These are things that are not happening always with contract sales, and what leads to some of the other problems that you see with contract sales, like delinquent taxes. So from our perspective, we've been working diligently for the past several years in trying to make these sales look more like traditional transactions. And through the use, we think, of private inspectors and opening up inspectors that would normally do inspections for a typical sale, someone who buys on a deed and mortgage. There could be some kind of code here or change to the code to make this look like a traditional transaction, and rather than more like a rental, and having the city be involved in devoting limited city resources to this effort. And I'd just like to say that since 2011, we have invested over $5 million in property repair, preservation, and rehabilitation in the exact neighborhoods where you guys need it. And that is something that we take very seriously. It's the lifeblood of our business, and if you have a property that it has problems with it, it doesn't sell as fast. We know that. We want to fix the problems. We want to improve the housing stock. And I think that listening today to that second group of Drake students really stuck out to me, as they were talking about property equity and improving property. And contracts are a method for these immigrants and refugees, poor, elderly, to gain equity in a property if we can work together with city resources, like the tool library for Habitat for Humanity, and to work as a community to improve properties. Then they're going to see the benefit of that equity on the other side of the contract. And we want to make sure, and the presenter from the Drake group said that even if they can get a cheap house and work on it and fix it up, that'll build their equity, that'll put them in a better financial position. It really is about affordability and how much can be done at any one time. So again, we're looking for the council to take this very seriously, give the ordinance 3 readings, and so that we have time to develop this language and to work with council and to make sure that we come to a beneficial result for the city of Des Moines.
Christopher, again, what organization do you work with?
Contract Exchange Corporation.
Contract Exchange Corp.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So,
Mr. Mayor,
again,
Joe?
Just a comment and a question. And I had an opportunity to meet with Tony and his son, Tony, but is there something in the ordinance that you're looking to change? Is it just the home inspectors that you want a private person to do it instead of our folks to do it? Is that what you're looking to change in this ordinance?
What it's saying is that it has to be up to property maintenance code of the same thing as the rental code, which is going to increase costs on to the buyers, the home purchasers, and whereas they may if it's not a serious issue, we agree. If there's a serious exterior issue or interior health and safety issues, that as per Mr. Kelly's report to the city on vacant and blighted property, they should modify the current ordinance to highlight those issues, and so that the city can go follow up as they have the right to do under current code. We feel like that may be the better use of city resources. Because if every time you inspect a contract sale and the house is in good condition and it's all fine, then you're kind of wasting your time when there is an urgent need to address the problem properties, the subnormal properties, which are far and away still owned free and clear or owned with bank financing by owner occupants.
But you're saying that minor infractions should be waived, and we shouldn't be looking at those things, only major infractions?
That's what was the recommendation of the report by Mr. Kelly. And I believe that seems to be, because this is home ownership and the city isn't inserting itself into any other real estate transactions. So it seems to me that if there are major infractions, yes, where there are health and safety issues, then the city should go in and inspect and follow up with code enforcement. Did I answer your question there?
I think so. I'm just a little confused. We're only supposed to look at only health and safety issues, but our job is to try to build our neighborhoods up, and this is another tool that we're going to use to do that. And the buyer's going to have to work with the seller to figure out how we're going to make that work. And we're not trying to be Big Brother and get into all contract, but in a way, this is a tool that we get to use to help take care of some of our slum and blighted areas, and to make sure, just like Pam said, that some of the folks that don't understand it, that they're not being taken advantage of. And I feel like those folks are being taken advantage of in some of these situations. Not by your company, I'm not saying that in any way, but by other folks that are selling it. We need to be able to represent those folks also that don't have a voice and are the majority of the contract sales buyers. Right. And we need to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. And that's our duty as council members, I believe, to make sure that happens.
And I think that's why I mentioned our license and wanting to turn contract sales.
I'm not saying I've had
no,
many.
And I apologize for interrupting. I think that why we focus so much on our license and the ways that people lose out and are taken advantage of on contract go far beyond just property condition. And it is this fact that there are people out there skirting the lending laws that have now been imposed upon contracts that the Financial Protection Bureau now has oversight over land installment contracts. And we believe that if more people were using attorneys to close the transactions and underwriting and originating these contracts, our buyers go through a whole process of getting these disclosures. They have to get me their documentation of their income and their tax returns. And they get their home inspection. They ask questions about the home inspection. They get a booklet that's called your Home Loan Toolkit. It's the same exact booklet that you get when you get a mortgage. And that talks about home inspections. We should treat people, like they can be responsible buyers and owners of these neighborhoods, and we think that fostering home ownership is going to be the thing that really turns these neighborhoods around when people believe they own the property and they have some capacity to improve it.
Linda?
I have just two questions. When you sell a home on contract, Mr. Schubert, do your contract buyers have a balloon where they have to refinance in 3 years, or do you carry the contract through the entire deed, or that buyer, if things change, he can refinance just like I can refinance my home loan?
Sure. This is something that did change in the past. We did do a lot of things with 5-year balloons. Balloons are very common in contracts, but we would always extend. If the account is in good standing and they are making their payments 5 years on, we'd always extend. Anymore, balloons are now illegal. You cannot have a balloon in a contract unless you're offering a bank rate. So if I was to be offering a balloon, my interest rate on that contract would be something like 4.5%. So very nearly, and even to that point, I need to have a balloon that's longer than 5 years. So no, anymore we're doing 15, 20, and 25-year amortizations.
So you're doing it just like a bank loan?
Just like a bank loan.
Just like a bank loan.
We think of it like a bank loan. We've invested $40,000 in new servicing software and improvements. We are working, I think the servicing of these contracts is really what sets our company apart from other organizations and why other sellers should be held to our standards, the standards that we're holding ourselves to. And that is going to go a far way. People won't sell crap houses on contract because they won't want to go through the whole lending law. So I think there is a solution here with what the council or the city staff has proposed and what we're doing in order to achieve both goals. Because we want to improve the housing stock and we also want to stop people from being taken advantage of from a lending side and making sure that all those protections are being advanced to them as well.
And do you ever have rentals that you can't get rental certificates on, so then you sell it on contract?
No.
Okay. And I think that's what we should be focusing on, are those people that have those rentals, they can't get the rental certificate, so they think, oh, well, I'll just sell it on contract. And do you think there's a way to differentiate between those guys who they may have 1 or 2 rentals, it's gone down in repairs, so they think, okay, I'll just sell it on contract, as opposed to someone who has a business that is regulated like you are?
I think that by making that seller use a licensed entity to originate it is going to go a far way. By qualifying someone on their ability to repay the payment, you're kind of implicitly qualifying them on their ability to afford other aspects of life, including home repairs. So I think that having everyone underwrite and originate their contracts the correct way is going to go a long way there. The city code currently does allow for properties that had rental certificates can't be transferred if there are violations. Opening up the amount of home inspectors that can do home inspections and allowing buyers to choose them, I think would allow a lot more information to flow freely to the buyer so that they can make an informed decision.
All right, I think we have another speaker here. Appreciate very much your input, and quite frankly, it sounds like your request to make sure we're going to have 3 ratings.
Hello, sorry, my name is Nancy Subibon. I live at 312 Corning Avenue in the Highland Park area. My past experiences, I was an interim director of construction for Habitat for Humanity through the AmeriCorps program for 3 years. My degree is in civil engineering, and I'm currently a substitute math teacher for the Des Moines Public Schools. So when it comes to that report, when it comes to the percentages, it would have been really easy to say, here's our housing stock. Percentage of the housing stock is is our subnormal. Of our subnormal, here is the contract sales, and of the subcontract sales, this is government, this is commercial, this is residential. That report doesn't do that. It tells you 5,000 are subnormal. Of that, this as many as contract sales. Of the 5,000, this is the percentages that are broken down in different categories. It's not clear. It's a walk around, so it takes hard time to figure out that 6%. So I don't know where the city's getting the 20%. And if you can find that for me, I'd love to see it. I'm going to pick, who all got my letter and actually read it? Seriously?
I received an email from you.
Sorry, my email.
I haven't gotten
one.
one.
I did receive one.
I sent, Diane, did you get one?
I don't recall.
Okay, if you got the email, I sent an email to all you guys. So please check. It's from
When did you send it?
Sent it Friday.
No, I didn't get it.
You didn't get it? Okay, I will resend it.
Well, I think I got one from you before Friday.
Okay, so you did not get that email. Okay, I will try to resend it. In fact, Diane, I'll send it to you today, and hopefully then...
Sure, we'll have it tonight then.
We'll have it? Okay, I don't know why it didn't go. I think everybody else got it. So I want to pretty much piggyback on the Drake student with her poverty ideas, because I live in these neighborhoods. I am not a high-income person. I live in the blighted areas. I have houses all around me that are boarded up. This has been a passion of mine, and that's why I work for Habitat. One thing that the lady said was poverty level. Now, if I inherited mom and dad's house, and I can't afford to fix it up, and no one can buy it because it can't qualify for a home loan, and the taxes are too high, just to be able, and I can't live in it my own family because I can't afford it, what are my options? You usually let it go back to Polk County. You just lose it. You lose your inheritance. And that's when, selling on contract, I could hire a contract salesperson who knows how to do it. They could sell that house for me on contract and manage it for me. I do believe the law states if you sell more than 3, you have to use a servicer. I'm not for sure on that. Someone can look into that. But if I'm just a person trying to get rid of grandma's house and I don't know what to do, it could be. But I don't have the money to bring it up to code. I don't have it, but the contract sailors could help me out with that. And someone maybe love to buy it, has the means, but he's going to do it part-time. It may take him 2 years to fix it up before they can move in. But that is a tool that I see as a good tool. I do see people being taken advantage of. I do. When it came back to the wolf people, oh yeah, they were the worst violators. We all have that taste in the back of our throat. But he was dealt with. We have means to be able to deal with violators. I do like...
How many people were taken advantage of?
I do like the idea of some kind of a task force to help educate and inform people when it comes to contract buyers. What is your responsibility? How do you do this? I do believe fire balloons are illegal. To be able to, but even with my case, people, after you buy your home for a year and you live in it a year, you can refinance it with the Neighborhood Finance Corporation. And so when it came to what do I do if my furnace went out, you can refinance with the Neighborhood Finance Corporation. My water heater went out, after it, you can refinance with the Neighborhood Finance. You know, I don't understand where we get, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. You've got your house on contract, you don't have the funds to fix your furnace. Why didn't anybody tell them about the Neighborhood Finance Corporation? That's what they're here for. We have wonderful programs in place. I like what you guys already have. I don't like what I saw for tonight. Just simple and easy like that. I'm sorry. Any questions for me? But I'll try to get that email out.
All right,
to you.
appreciate it, and we'll look forward to reviewing that.
Thank you, Nancy.
I just did a search, I didn't save.
All right, anything else? Anybody?
Does this overhead work for now? Tonight, or do we have to wait
Yep.
till tonight? You just press it.
Right up there.
Does that work for you?
It does.
Okay. I'm Andrew Leetso. Move it where?
A little the other way.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yep.
Perfect.
I'm Andrew Leetso, and I live at 1250 41st Street in Des Moines. I'm also executive director of the Iowa Landlord Association and the Iowa Real Estate Investors Association. And this picture is an example of a property that you folks are probably trying to improve. This one on the left, actually, this was in the report that the city received or paid someone that was mentioned of Kelly, Mr. Kelly. It was in that report. I hadn't seen that it was in the report. This just happens to be a few houses up from where I live. The property right here was, the gal died. Geraldine Jeanette died. She lived there for many, many decades. And the house sat vacant for 6 years. I went to her son's house and personally tried to get him to sell this property. And he refused to do it. Eventually he made the news because he died on his couch and he wasn't discovered for 2 years.
Yeah.
There are people in the city of Des Moines who are not qualified to get normal financing. And so this is a type of a property where the city actually bought it from an investor who bought this house at a tax sale. So this gentleman who died on the couch was not able to, I went down and knocked on his door 5 times, tried to get him to sell the property to an investor. And he refused to have any interest in it. But the city eventually acquired this property and then sold it to some investors. And a gentleman who's been to some of these meetings spent better part of a year rehabbing this house. And this happens all over our city, but there's another one that was on our block. The same thing happened. This was an older woman who lived there for many decades. She did not have the resources to rehab her property, but an investor bought that property and flipped it. So one of the things I'm concerned about with this proposed ordinance is kind of the law of unintended consequences. So many positive things go on in the city already from investors who are making investment in the city of Des Moines. And this is focusing on, this proposed ordinance is focusing on 6% of the real estate that's subnormal. The rest of it is either rental property, which is approximately 14%, and the other 80% is owner-occupied. So I guess what I'm thinking is these owner-occupants, there's a lot bigger problem for the city with either vacant houses or owner-occupied, or they're occupied with people who don't have adequate resources to fix them. So companies like Contract Exchange come in and they'll buy them, they'll fix them up, they'll sell them on a contract. And who's buying these? They tend to be buyers who can't get traditional financing. So one of the unintended consequences of this type of an ordinance would be that those buyers may not be able to even purchase the home. Right now they can't get traditional financing or they wouldn't be buying on a contract. They'd be buying FHA or something that's even less down payment. You know, so That's one of the issues. So if you look at the city's subnormal property analysis, there's only, of all of the subnormal properties, only 20% of them are either rentals or contract. The other 80%, over 4,000, are owner occupied. So I guess my question is even in this report, the consultant who is hired recommends a more comprehensive approach. Would be in order. In other words, slow this process down a little bit and think of the longer term consequences. And so from our perspective, I guess I think representing 413 investors who are our members, this could be not so good for the city of Des Moines from an economic point of view, but also just from helping to improve the neighborhoods. People such as Contract Exchange Corporation, who's invested $5 million over the last 6 years, may say, we don't want to invest in Des Moines. Too complicated. That's a potential ramification of such an ordinance. With that, I'm open to any comment.
All right, anybody have any questions? Bill?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did meet with Tony and Steve Smith and Andrew last Friday. 2.5 hours we talked. And coming from a perspective, I just want to let everybody know that my first home was a contract sale. And the reason it was that way is because I just graduated from college. I was unemployed. I was freshly married. I went to my folks. They had 7 other kids to support. I went to Ann's folks. They had 6 other kids to support, so I had nothing. My credit rating was right there. So I know exactly how to, and it worked out great for me. And so after listening to the concerns, I think there's some accommodations we can make in the ordinance. Like the mayor said, we're going to hear 3 hearings on this, but I would like to make sure that we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face. 36 years in business, that's a telling story. They've obviously been doing things right. And the things that I've heard and they want to do, I think that's going to be great to enhance the contract sales. And I still want to make sure, just like Joe says, I want to make sure that we catch the people that are causing all the problems and deal with them. That's where we need to focus.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anybody else that wants to jump up and make a couple of comments, let's declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Can we see how many contract sales Neighborhood Finance Corp has converted from